Reclaim is a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter, with your host, Thais Sky. Together, we will explore the questions of what does it look like to reclaim our sovereignty, our worthiness, our voices as women in this messy world. No topics are barred as we offer roundtable discussions on life, spirituality, politics, and what it means to be a woman in the modern age. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Thais Sky here. I am your host of Reclaim the Podcast, and I come to you this week with an incredible interview with Ericka, Hines, and Desiree Adaway. I'll be bringing them on in a minute. That conversation is so potent and rich, and I know you're going to get so much out of it. But before I bring them on, I just want to share something that I've been thinking about this past week, and that's this concept of doing inner work. You know, if you read any self-development book, any spiritual book, it talks about the importance of doing inner work. And I want to highlight just how important inner work is. I mean, if you think about inner work and weeding, you know, if you just pluck the weed, that's like trying to fix your exterior without doing the inner work. Things are just going to come back up. Patterns are just going to keep arising. We want to get to the root of the problem, and that starts within ourselves. It starts by understanding our patterns and our deep need for validation and the ways in which we've learned how to conform with the world and the beliefs that we've developed. I mean, all of that is so fucking critical. My life would be, God, unrecognizable if I hadn't started doing that inner work over 10 years ago. And it's important. It's so important. But here's my fear. My fear is that as we start to understand that the inner realm has so much consequence over the outer realm that we neglect the outer realm. And by that I mean we only focus on doing our own work, which in many ways kind of feeds into this idea of individualism, like you just have to be out for yourself. And I want us to remember that the outer work is really critical too. Like, it's important for us to recognize that we're citizens of this world, and how the world unfolds is part of our responsibility. And so how our democracy and shapes out in this country, how the conversations of government shape out in your country, it's important that you are a part of that. You know, checking out from the news, never knowing what's going on out there. I mean, that's so privileged. That's so individualizationizing of your life. And there's a power to remembering that we are a part of a collective. And so, yes, the inner work is critical. The inner work is like weeding, right? We got to do that deeper inner stuff that pulls the weed out by the roots instead of just plucking it at the top. I mean, that stuff's critical. But let's not forget that we also have to show up for other people. That we also have to be engaging in difficult conversations. That we also have to be constantly challenging ourselves and expanding our minds and thinking of different ways that we can be better humans in the world, okay? I'm not saying this from a place of you're not doing enough. I'm saying this from a place of let's remember our interconnectedness. Let's remember that we are we're all tied to the same fate, and we're not free until all of us are free. And there are many, 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 many people on this planet who are definitely not free. And we have a responsibility of supporting them, right? As leaders, as teachers, as healers, as coaches, we're not supposed to be preaching from a pedestal. We're supposed to be down in the trenches, pulling people, pushing people, loving people, supporting people. That's really what it means to be a change maker. And so whenever you notice yourself doing inner work, yes, but kind of using it as an excuse to kind of not look at what's happening in the world, because that's where I was coming from. I'm just sharing this because this was my reality. I thought as long as I was a good person, that would somehow ripple out into the world. But that's missing a key ingredient there, which is action, which is speaking up, which is advocating for, which is leveraging your power, leveraging the work that you are doing internally. The more you get free there, use that freedom to speak up for those who are still deeply entrenched in their stuff. Okay? So that's something I've been thinking about, something I want you to be cognizant of. Like, let's not use inner work as a form of spiritual bypassing to avoid showing up as human beings on this planet and being a part of this interconnectedness of this web that we are in together. All right. You feel me? Okay. So Ericka Hines, Desiree Adaway are in the house. Let me read their bio to you. I'll start with Ericka. Ericka Hines, principal of Every Level Leadership, is a consultant, advisor, strategist, curriculum designer, and senior trainer who works with organizations to do two things: use diversity to their advantage and leverage leadership across levels. As a consultant, she embraces opportunities for change and exploration as she works with clients to create productive and inclusive workplaces. She has enjoyed leading projects and collaborating with teams in national foundations, government agencies, nonprofits, and small businesses. To date, she has combined her deep knowledge and quick wit to train over 1,500 individuals across the country. Her work always features a mix of solid data, actionable information, and useful skills. She holds a Juris Doctor from the University of Georgia School of Law and a BA in Political Science from Wright State University. You can learn more about Ericka at everylevelleads.com, and you can connect with her on Facebook and Twitter. Her Facebook is facebook.com/social change diva. She's amazing. I love that so much. Facebook.com/social change diva. And you can find her on Twitter at twitter.com/everylevelleads. And that's also her website, everylevelleads.com. And of course, you can find this information in the show notes as well. And now, Desiree Adaway. Desiree Adaway is a seasoned nonprofit consultant and facilitator. All of her presentations have a mix of thought-provoking content presented with humor and wit. When she teaches, she makes a point to connect with every person and creates a safe space for their growth. She is known by staff, senior leadership, peers, and partners as being great at open, honest, and productive conversations. She's not afraid of addressing anything that gets in the way of great work. Her style is positive, approachable, engaging, service-oriented, and audience-centered. You can learn more about Desiree at DesireeAdaway.com. You can also connect with her on Facebook at facebook.com/Desiree Adaway and on Twitter at twitter.com/Desiree Adaway. I interviewed Desiree for my previous podcast, Be Amplified, and the conversation that was had was so special and powerful that I knew I wanted to have her back. So this time around, I invited not only Desiree, but also her partner in crime, Ericka Hines. Desiree and Ericka have a course together called Diversity is an Asset. And they talk a lot online about racism and social justice. And they are leaders in the industry. So it's a treat and a pleasure. And I feel so lucky to have both of these women together in one place to talk about leadership. So as you're listening to this conversation, I invite you to think about your own relationship with playing big and having big conversations. What I mean by this is, how are you doing in having conversations that are uncomfortable, whether that's online or with close family friends? How are you in expressing yourself and talking about your values and your truth? Like, what is preventing you from really stepping into a louder voice on things that matter? And what are you committed to doing after this podcast to make sure that you are taking a stand for things that are uncomfortable? Ericka and Desiree, welcome to Reclaim. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get into this idea of reclaiming leadership. How would you define leadership? What does leadership look like for you?
I'll start. So I think leadership, like anything, happens at different levels. I think there's personal leadership. I think there's like sort of group leadership. I think there's organizational leadership, and I think that there's societal leadership. Now, unfortunately, all of those things to date have been defined by white heterosexual male meritocracy. And when we think about what are leadership qualities and leadership skills that people should have, They, I mean, literally have been defined, the images that have been put forth, the ideologies, the learnings, the frameworks, almost all of them have been put forth by white men and white women. So while I think that we could all agree that like the levels of leadership apply, we have a great deal of work to do to decolonize ourselves from what current leadership is and what it can look like moving forward.
And I would just add to Ericka Hines' brilliance. I talk about leadership as liberation. And that for me, leadership, if I'm being truly, that the leader that Ericka talks about, not the myth, not the, the illusion of leadership that we try to sell people, but if I'm being who I am myself as a leader, then there's some core components to that leadership, balance and love and competence, right?
Responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility, accountability, this real clear understanding of being able to succeed in this role, that I am, had someone today teach me that is when you're standing straight up, that kind of line that makes you stand tall is actually your dignity. And that is a part of, right, that actually is dignity. And so bringing the dignity there, and then that kind of mutual support and encouragement and trust, and those are core components for me to liberation and to how I want to show up as a leader in the community.
I think that if I could, the one piece of the meritocracy that I would keep is entitlement. And I think leadership is feeling entitled to lead. And it's why I am letting go of the word empowering ourselves to lead. I don't need to feel empowered to lead. I feel quite entitled to lead. And there is a difference and a powerful distinction between those two.
Well, oftentimes the word entitlement is seen as a very negative. It's this idea of people are going to mooch off the government. And so I'm curious, when you think of entitlement, what are you speaking to?
Go ahead, Desiree.
I was just going to say, entitlement is, we've been taught that only certain people can be entitled. And the rest of us we don't get that. And so when I think you're right, Ericka, right? Like for me, it is saying that I'm this Black woman and I can walk in any room and be in that space and own it. Right? And take up all that space and show up as the person who's driving the conversation and driving the agenda.
Right. And I think it's about presence. I think it's about, and the reason that I've picked entitled over empowered is that I just feel quite sick of being told what I can and cannot do. I am quite sick of being handed the scraps of whatever is left, even in the leadership world, and being told to be grateful and thankful for that. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I am walking in and standing in my presence in all of my leadership ability.
That's right.
And doing that with less fear than I think people would like for me to have.
Well, no, that's right, because we've been socialized to what the dominant group is, right? And what this mythical man, white, middle, upper class, able-bodied heterosexual, Gentile is. And Ericka, you and I will never be that, no matter how much we try.
Exactly.
That will never happen. And so, while that is so for me, which is why leadership is liberation, because I actually have to define it for myself, because society will never show it to me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do like your word entitlement over empowerment, because, right, we're born with the specific set of social identities, and they predispose us to unequal roles. And so if I know already that I can never be that, then why am I going to even play that game? I'm going to go out and be me in ways that are freeing and work for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I hope we've answered your question.
It's interesting. When you said the word entitlement, I immediately thought of a conversation that I had with Mary Beth Bonfiglio and Randy Buckley on this idea of earning a living. And one must earn a life. And that is the words that our culture, our capitalistic culture, decides to define you making money, right? You have to earn a living and to earn a life. And this sense of entitlement is saying, actually, I don't have to earn a life. I am a life. And I am entitled to be in that life. And I don't have to prove or validate or look like or be like anybody else in order to be in that space. That's what I heard when you said the word entitlement. Do you feel like that's kind of, do you feel like that's accurate to what you're saying about entitlement, or am I totally off?
No, I think it's accurate. I think that I'm sort of keying into the word validate, which is that I actually have no problem validating. What I do have a problem with is the goalpost moving of what validation is. Mm. So, when people are like, I have all the confidence of a mediocre white man, I'm like, I have more leadership than a mediocre white man. And if that is literally the goalpost, don't move it, because I've already met that.
Right.
I'm good.
And for me, it goes back to Audre Lorde, because what does not go back to Audre Lorde? Everything does that matters in life, right? The master tools will never dismantle the master's house. Mm-hmm. I will never win at this game.
Right.
I will never win at this white supremacist, capitalist system idea of what a leader is. So,
well, you won't do it and stay true to who you are and who you want to be.
Exactly. But again, going back to what you said, Ericka, even if I do show up that way, it ain't enough.
Right. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yesterday we had a big win for the Dems, apparently. We have all this quote unquote, diversity in the people that we've elected, which is great. We've elected 2 trans women into government, and in many ways I know that that's a win, and I don't want to take away from that felt win. And it's also I feel that it's not like electing diverse individuals is not going to fundamentally change a system that's built on white supremacy. And so how do we navigate that space of great leaders there are more types of people being represented in leadership, and they're still upholding a system that's inherently broken?
Well, I think first of all, we have to accept that representation is the floor of this, like it's the bottom rung of the goals of like what we're trying to achieve. And so, we can acknowledge, we can be happy about representation or increased diverse representation, but that is literally the floor. Like we should have diverse representation.
Yeah.
And yesterday's wins that we're all happy about, I would say, let's be happy about that. However, that is literally the bottom rung of what we should be expecting and should be holding people accountable to. These are still elected officials that were elected by people. And part of the reasons that they were elected is because they have different perspectives and backgrounds than the people who held those seats before them. And I hope that they bring that to the front of how they are showing up as politicians. But that doesn't mean that they get any sort of pass. The issues are still the issues that I care about. I still want for my elected officials to push them in the way that I want them to be pushed. But I think that we can't ever sit on our laurels, especially around talking about diversity in all of its forms, that representation is ever enough. It's not. It matters, but it is not enough, ever.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. And another reason it matters is because, let's be clear, they're making policy. And they're making policy about my brown body, my brown woman body. And if nobody's in there that looks like me, that understands my story, my experiences, who understands what it means to navigate and walk the world the way that I do, then my voice will not be heard in those spaces.
Yeah.
Because none of them have a deep analysis.
If we have people of color, we at least increase the likeliness that the perspective will be put into the actual analysis.
Right.
We don't have that when we have only the dominant white culture. That is not, it's not guaranteed in either way, but it's more likely the more diverse voices we have present at the table.
Because those voices are going to tell the story, which again keep the dominant culture dominant.
Right.
Right. There's never been a time, I get tired of telling these people, there's never been a time in the history of the world where an oppressor stood up one day and said, "You're all right. I have been oppressing y'all. I must stop today. Let me step back and let y'all just have all of this. That has never happened. And it never will happen.
Because why would I ever give up power?
Because why would I give up power?
Yeah.
And that is true of the human race.
This is what I'm saying. It's human race. So
I got Go ahead.
So if you're in power, right, like nobody's ever going to be like, let me move over here. Let Ericka Hines run the world. No, we have to fight that human nature and say, let me care about the collective before my own.
So if we look at leadership then as a managing of power, of understanding power. Well, first off, I feel like the basic understanding I think of leadership is that one must understand power dynamics in order to actually be an effective leader.
Oh yeah. You need to know how to navigate.
I'm going to say this. Everything is about power.
Mm.
That is so true.
Race,
it's tiring.
Class, it's all about power. And we have to understand how it works, power above, power below, power, right? It's all about power. And we don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's our reality.
Well, Desiree, you wrote something on Facebook yesterday that I want to read out here because I feel like it's important.
Like, did I use bad words?
What did Desiree write? Because she writes some stuff. Go.
I'm like, wait a minute. Did I use bad words?
Always.
No, it's
Always.
So you wrote, how do you manage to oppress over 50% of the population and not have a revolution on your hands? You normalize it via economic power control, violence or threats of violence, and create systems, norms, institutions, and expectations that exploit and or undervalues the work they provide to society.
Yeah. Eric and I have been teaching, we teach a 3-month social justice course, and month 2, which is November, is around sexism and heterosexism. And we were teaching a class on Monday, and that's part of what we teach. It's like,
that was actually the first question that we asked when we started talking about sexism.
Right.
Was this question of the 50% and the answer.
Right. And so Sex, right? How do you keep the majority oppressed? You normalize it.
Yeah.
With expectations and norms and standards. You do that through things like, Ericka's like, oh Lord, she's about to go off. You do it by creating these mythologies around the nuclear family unit, patriotism, the illusion of meritocracy. These are all vehicles that, one, ultimately lead you to two things that happen. It is economic power and control, and or violence or threats of violence against you.
Yeah, co-sign that.
Well, so that post made me think a lot, because the percentage of white men is a very stark minority compared to the percentage of elected white men officials or white men in leadership. And how do you keep the minority in power? It must be
systems and institutions.
Right.
By reinforcing the idea, literally, that the patriarchy, that the father figure,
that's right,
the father figure will save us. And that is what women have done and continue to do. And if I can just be really direct, that is what white women have done and continue to do. They have invested in the idea of the male patriarchal father figure as having the utmost wisdom and intellect and strategic sense to run every single cultural and economic system in this country. And until they stop this fucking foolishness in their brains, this will continue. And what is very sad, and why I'm going off of my diatribe here, is the fact that women of color, men of color, all of, trans men, trans women, non-binary folks, unfortunately, our economic well-being is tied up into how well white women are doing. I'm not even going to talk about white men. That's a distant thing to me. But white women, if they do better, we get a little bit better. And they realize that or they don't realize that, because they stay fucking up.
That's real. No, it is, right? So it's again, we're socialized one that's the head of the household, the head of the company, all these people, they'll take care of you. They'll have your best interest at heart. They'll look out for you.
And usually that's a man.
And it's usually a man. And but it also is isolating, right? That my family unit is where everything comes from. This kind of nuclear unit. That again, it is not about how are we collectively raising children or living our lives or doing some of these things. And that I get to be chosen by this leader, by the person, right? Mm-hmm. Now, how many times as women do we wait to be chosen? And what are those characteristics that make us worthy of being chosen, right? And there are a lot of things around being good and
pretty
and all the things, again, things that keep you so caught up in systems that you don't get to push back, right? So it's I say all the time, the patriarchy makes you edit everything that goes in your mouth and everything that comes out of your mouth.
That's real talk.
That's the patriarchy, telling me what I can eat and what I can't eat and how I need to look. I do not live for the male gaze. I do not live for the white gaze. And when people hear that, it is mind-blowing for them.
Why are you pulling out Toni Morrison right now? Why? Why are you going over into Toni Morrison land? Damn.
Because why shouldn't we? Hello. Right? Because Toni Morrison, for me, again, one of the most instructional interviews was it Charlie Rose that was interviewing her?
Yeah, it was Charlie Rose.
And And he said something about like, why don't you just write your books? And she was like, I don't write my books for the white gays. I don't do it through their lens. It's not, that's, And he was so shocked, and she was like, why would I?
Yes, Charlie was like,
He didn't know what to say, right? Because she was just like, no. And that's it, right? Like, society, again, how we socialize, we're socialized that we make these decisions, and they're all based upon the male gaze or the white gaze. Are we respectable? Are we pretty? Are we? And it's never I am, I want. I decide.
That's going back to my entitlement versus empowerment.
That's exactly right. That's
decision from now on.
The smarter one out of us too.
No, you're pretty smart, Toe. I love you too.
But that's it, right? And so these systems of oppression are so interlocked, right? So as white women, right, who fought for the right to vote, threw black folks under the bus saying, but give us the right to vote first before you give it to a black man, because we'll help keep whiteness in power.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Y'all been doing it every vote since.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the reality. The reality is there's these systems and institution that we navigate, right? And I was talking with some young folks today that I work with, and one of them said to me, she's like, it's the first time in my life I realized that I can like white people and hate white supremacy.
Yes, you can.
And I said to her, that key will change your life. Because she was so angry. She just walked around so angry all the time. And I said, you can like white people and hate the institution, the system of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And I want white people to hate the system and institution of white supremacy as well.
Okay, stop preaching so she can ask more questions.
Well, so this made me think of, Desiree, our conversation a bit earlier where you talked about how white women rather identify with whiteness than with women, with their marginalized identity. And I'm curious to hear more about that power dynamic of wanting to choose what is in alignment with what is, supreme. There are air quotes there for those of you listening that you can't see.
Yeah, I always say that white women choose they choose whiteness over womanhood, over their best interest. But I think it's because, again, what Ericka said, or it's around that's the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm. So Desiree and I are going to disagree, which we actually do disagree sometimes. We are not one actual brain.
It's confusing.
Let's just clarify that for people.
That is confusing. That's a little disorienting.
I know. They're like, what would Desiree think? I'm like, she would think this, but actually I disagree. So, I mean, I would say that if we're talking about white women, like they will align with their marginalized identity of being women. The nuance and the unfortunate nuance is that identity of being a woman is still white.
Mm.
And so the complete, like what a woman is from the black, brown folks, does not automatically enter into the psyche of white women as they're talking about being a feminist. And this is historical. And while we can say it's gotten better today, some people would say, oh, it's so much better. It's literally like, electing Barack Obama in 2008, where we think we're like post-race feminist. We're not. Until white women can actually talk about being a feminist without people of color and women of color being anomalies or secondary thoughts like, oh yeah, them too.
Mm-hmm.
Then yes, they are reinforcing whiteness by continuing to create a feminist agenda that is not inclusive. And by creating a feminist agenda that, when it does become inclusive, happens because women of color are literally saying, I will not show up. It shouldn't have to be that way. It would be nice if we can naturally be inclusive, but we're not. It's like, it's me saying, I'm going to take my vote and go over here. I'm going to not endorse you, and I'm a feminist, until you show up and you listen to me. That shouldn't have to exist, and it still does.
That's why I keep you around, Hines.
Because I get pissed off?
Yeah, and I dig your brain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that construct of how can you be a woman in a way that pleases the white male gaze and inherently lose what it means to actually be this idea of a woman.
Which goes back to my whole thing around leadership. I can never be that, so I'm not going to try. I'm never going to be the woman that is built for the white male gaze.
Well, unless you're fetishized, but that's a whole different topic.
We're not even going into that, right?
Okay.
So which is a whole nother thing.
I'm just saying, it could happen, but that's a different.
And it does, but that's besides the point. So, okay. but I knew I was never going to be the blonde woman. That was never going to be my existence. That life, that experience. And so I didn't have to, in some ways that was freeing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious too, your, ideas and notions around leadership as it relates to the idea of being a hyper individualized nation, while also honoring that individualization is a very white people thing. And it's almost like a form of privilege, right? That you get to be focused on just yourself and you don't have to be focused on your collective and your community, and how your notions of leadership relate to that.
I think, well, it's this kind of respectability, right? Like we have to show up in spaces certain ways, in ways that are palatable and assimilates, right, to what white society tells us is or is not acceptable. And so there's some, we can just look at the recent horrible shootings. White men are seen as individuals. Oh, there was mental illness, which is a crock of shit, because there are plenty of women with mental illness who don't go on shooting rampages. But
toxic masculinity. Oh, sorry.
Right. So, but they're always seen as individuals.
Yeah.
They're always seen as individuals. They're always given that courtesy, that respect, that, oh, they made that decision themselves and it does not reflect back on their family or their community. Whereas, I don't know about Ericka, but I still, and I shouldn't have to do this, but I still, anytime something happens, I'm like crossing every finger going, please don't be black.
Please. I'm running to the Google to try and figure out, I'm literally like, what is their race and ethnicity? I need to know that.
Don't be brown. Don't be
Do
brown.
not be a black person, because suddenly that will, or a brown person, because that is a complete indictment on every member of your group. And so perhaps get my thoughts on your comment about a hyper individualized country. I'm not so sure that that's true. I think it continues to be true for white men, and it will always be true for white men. But other cultures literally have been raised in community like that. That is our DNA foundation. And I don't think that we've left that. I think about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter actually is about collective. And these are young, quote unquote, young people. Native Lives Matter. cultures are actually built on community. And so in this hyper individualized piece, are we still continuing to hold up? We're holding up the loudest, squeakiest voices. But that continues to be unfair to what is underneath the surface. And so I think, I think we have to like sort of think about broadening our perspectives, all of us, myself included, to say there are systems, there are societies inside of the United States of America, if we're talking about that, and the world, that are built on community, built on communion, built upon, what's mine is yours, yours is mine, I am here, we are here together.
Oh yeah, so many.
And that's actually prominent, probably more dominant.
But we also get punished for that.
Oh God, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're working a job and you're like, actually, I have to go home and take care of my grandma or take care of my nieces or nephews, or right, things that the collective do within a family structure, or right, my money is shared amongst adults. My niece is in college and I'm like, how much are your books? Because I got some extra money, so I'm going to buy your books this semester so my sister doesn't have to. Like, until my people are okay, I'm not okay. Like, there is never a sense of division around that. And that's why when I say we get free together, I mean it. Like, because I need to know that Ericka's going to take care of mine if I'm not here.
Right. And I think that actually does show up in our leadership, which is, when we talk about mentoring and coaching, and how I've always believed in terms of leadership that, like, at some point you lift as you climb.
That's right.
Ideally, you would be doing that, the moment you assume any type of formal leadership role. But okay, let's say you're not comfortable, or you're trying to get yours or whatever. At some point, that is the price we pay. That is our responsibility as leaders, is to lift as we climb. And that is definitely something that's ingrained in my own leadership, which is, I'm not out here trying to be a leader purely for my own ego. I'm really trying to do it so that I can affect change, but also I can support other people who want to affect change.
Yeah. So that was going to be kind of my next question, which is, if we're talking to young folks about leadership, and if there's anything you want them to know about stepping into leadership and feeling that sense of entitlement to lead, what would you say to them?
I and Ericka may or may not agree with this.
I disagree, just on purpose.
I don't tell young people how to find their liberation. I don't tell them how to use their voice. I don't tell them what words to use. I don't tell them not to be angry. I don't tell them any of those things. That is for them to do that work. And I am just there to help them. Right? Mm-hmm. But that is theirs.
Mm.
So the piece of advice that I have is that you always need an inside and outside strategy. So we always need to be pushing, but inside you need someone working the levers. Literally, you need to whatever change we're trying to create, you need the agitation from the outside, but also inside you need somebody who understands the system, who can maneuver it, and be in communication with the outside. Like, they work together. And I think all too often, and I think what's made sexy is like agitate. And that is important. And I also think that this might be my lawyer mind working. Like, you got to know, you actually have to know the inside in order to bring it down. You can't actually drain the swamp without understanding what the swamp is.
On your journey of finding your voice, right, in your space, what was your biggest surprise or moment of, I didn't think it was going to do that or be that way or feel that way on your journey, on the climb of your leadership, of your voice, of your presence?
I want to answer for Desiree.
Please do.
This is interesting. Okay. I'm going to answer in one way for Desiree, which may also be the answer for myself as well. So I think that when you have a certain amount of natural leadership that Desiree has, and I think she knows what I'm about to say, it is because it is so natural to you and because you don't know how else to show up and you've been in this role of leadership since probably you were a kid. It is very uncomfortable and a little bit, it can sort of knock you off when people are having a reaction to that leadership. You're almost great. You're almost good if people have a negative reaction like that. You can deal with because you've probably like braced yourself for it. But when people continually bring up to you, and this has happened for both of us, and will probably continue to happen for both of us. When people bring up to you, what you're saying or, your voice or your presence, like all of those are so strong. You don't know how to handle that because we only know how to be this way. Desiree only knows how to be Desiree. I only know how to be Ericka. And we, both of us only know how to show up as we have shown up. I can say, so that's my answer for Desiree. Would you like to answer for Ericka?
I think I.
Or was I right?
Ericka was right.
Thank you.
No, that's real. So when I think, how people talk about the imposter syndrome, I always say that I don't really have that. And the reason I don't have it is because I don't let people give me a title that I don't think I've earned. And so I can live with someone calling me a leader. What I will not live with is being a guru for someone. Like that I won't do, so that I will stop.
But you have no control over that. But that's a whole other topic.
It's a whole different topic. But I really think for me, I don't consider myself an activist because for me, activists are boots on the ground in the streets activists. And I always say, nope, I support activists. I support activists through strategy, through coaching, through nurturing, through fundraising, right? Through these 18 ways is how I show up and support activists. But I'm not an activist. And so as long as I feel really good and clear and authentic in whatever these titles are that I wear, then I get to fully show up as myself. And I don't get to worry about, did I say the right thing in the right way?
But I think for both of us, when that is mirrored back to us, that is in fact received and people see that in us, it's uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, it can be. It can be because it's just really natural. Again, it's just how we both show up, right? I mean, we're both big mouths and we both value, kind of
you're the big mouth
analysis. I'm okay. I'm the dirty mouth. I'm the dirty, filthy mouth. But we value the deeper analysis and we value challenging and pushing and prodding,
Being provocative,
challenge. Like, these are things that we are like,
okay.
Ultimately, while we may go down different roads, we're trying to get to the same place. And I think that's the piece there, is that there's no right way. There's no one road that'll get you where you need to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's things that people don't like to hear, though, Desiree. They want the 5 steps.
Oh, my God. People are like, just let me sit at the feet and touch the hem of your garments and teach me the ways. And I'm like, what ways?
But
the
what
ways
part
that I'm
of
constantly learning? Ericka and I are out here constantly learning.
Oh my God, yes. What part of our life is ever 5 steps? I mean, we are complex human beings. We have complex emotions. We have sometimes simple needs, but sometimes complex needs. Like, this idea that, first of all, you can ever guarantee that something is going to work out the way that you think it will.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And secondly, there's no 5-step anything. Maybe making an egg, but like, that's it. Shit's hard. Shit is complicated, and like, pick up and let's go.
We come with so many different identities, and they evolve and change as we do. So what worked for you before may not work for you now, and that's part of it. This whole sense that I have to know, perfectionism, since this fear of being uncomfortable even for a damn second. All of these things drive me insane, because who told you it was easy?
Are you done?
No, this pisses me off. Whoever said it was easy? Whoever said it was supposed to be easy?
Well, whoever said that it would be painless.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that is what we're all running from is pain.
Yeah.
Especially in this work. It can't hurt me. Doing this work can't hurt me. And I'm like, no, it might hurt you, but I don't think you're going to die. Literally do not think you're going to die. No. In instances, you might, but most of the time, we're not going to die.
And I see both of you putting yourself and your work and being that provocative voice in such a powerful way. And I see very little, because I only see what's online, but from the very little that I see online, there is an unapologeticness about that presence. And I can see, for me personally, how that is very inspiring, because these are not small conversations that both of you lead. These are big conversations about big,
But this is it. None of us lead small lives. So why are we having small conversations?
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't. We don't lead small lives. So why are we having basic ass conversations with one another?
Because we're afraid.
Well, so for me personally, I've never received more pushback, conversations, dynamicism, and big conversations than in the year that I've spent really diving into social justice and racism, right, and all the isms. And it requires you to become a bigger person.
Oh, it does. And it takes all of the self-help and the coaching and the personal development. And you literally have to grind it through the mill of social justice and equity. And what I think happens, and I think about this, I'm not sure how much Desiree thinks about this. I think that until we can begin to see our own personal development through a lens of not just I, but we, like what happens to me affects other people. And that goes to Desiree's piece. Like, we don't lead simple lives. So why are we having simple conversations? Like, until we can begin to do that self-development work with literally like a lens of we-ness and the impact of our choices as individuals, then we're going to stay. So it's going to stay incredibly just myopic.
Yes.
And small.
That's the word. Myopic. Yes.
and so I will say for Desiree and myself and others, like, I'm never interested in having a conversation that's myopic. I'm always interested in having the conversation that's like, let's name the big thing in the room. I don't know the answers, but at least if we name it, I mean, shit, we have a better chance of solving it if we can name it, if we can say the words, and if we're then and we can look at whatever this other piece is, like we can look at self-development, but we are purposely going to apply this lens. And if that means that makes you uncomfortable, or that means that you have to question who you are, I mean, well, then welcome to the fucking world.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of being a person of color. Welcome to the world of being anything that is not white male or white female. Like, we always have to deal with the double consciousness / triple consciousness of our lives. So guess what? Welcome to that shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's, you don't have to. You don't have to want the bigger conversations. You can stay myopic, and you can stay with those small conversations, and you can stay with that network being shallow, and like, you can navigate your life like that and never think twice about it.
You can, but it's bad. It's bad.
Or
I judge you. Go ahead.
Or you can want something more.
All right, fine.
You can want something more for yourself and your life and your existence. And you can want something more that is actually, again, not about you, but is about the collective.
Or how about is about you and the collective? Like, why, like, you and I've talked about this, Desiree. It's like, I like money.
Yeah.
I like living a decent lifestyle. And yet I constantly am thinking about myself and beyond my family. So that's like part of this is like part of that is like the nuclear family or whatever the family is. It's like, but I am constantly thinking about my community. And I'm always constantly thinking about what are the definitions of that community: geographic, race, gender identity, like all of those ways, and how is what I'm doing and the choices that I'm making and the words that I'm saying, what is the impact that I want to have? And carrying that responsibility, like that is what I daily am trying to do. Be a good steward to other people.
Which means it's not about your own self-interest all the time.
Right.
And that right there is, I think, the most spiritual thing that can ever be said.
So, Dr. Kinde, Abraham Kinde,
who's her intellectual boyfriend, by the way.
God, I just want to marry him in all the ways. His definition of racism is actually not hate; it's actually self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Right? Because when you're doing those laws, when you're making those policies, you're putting your self-interest above others.
Yeah.
And that selfishness, that self-interest, that's putting myself above everybody else. Not right. It's that either or thinking. It's not the and. It's not the non-binary thinking around it. So.
And that is why it's Wednesday and we must smash the patriarchy.
Well, because I'm like, the patriarchy honestly ain't about me.
No.
It wasn't built for me. It was built to exploit me as a woman. And white supremacy was built to exploit me as a Black woman.
But we are rising up.
Those systems don't work for me. They don't work for me.
Yeah. Well, I promised I would keep this under an hour, and we're already over it because I knew it would happen. I
hope we were helpful.
It was more than helpful. Your wisdoms have been so rich and beautiful, and I so appreciate both of your voices here on this podcast. Thank you, Ericka. Thank you, Desiree, so much.
Thank you.